All right, folks. Today I'm joined by Nicole and Brittany here. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to have a discussion about something that came up. I actually wanted to do this last week, but then I was just steamrolled by the plague, and that didn't happen. But a certain Daily Wire host said something that we'd like to discuss a little bit. It was talking about The Witcher, Netflix, and quote, there's a couple of scenes where women fight with swords, and I just hate these scenes because, quote again, no woman can fight with swords. Zero women can fight with a sword. Now,
Yeah, that caused quite
before
a stir.
before we tear this apart, I find it pretty amusing that this person. I mean, I nitpick things for entertainment, including The Witcher, fight scenes and everything, realism and all that. But to approach a series which has magic and monsters, but women with swords, that's where you draw the line. That's just bizarre to me. I mean, come on. The two of you have obviously done a lot of fighting, and just what attracted you to HEMA in the first place? You want to talk about that, Nicole?
Sure. Um, Actually, it was funny when you said that question. I was thinking about, how long I've actually been doing this. And the main reason I started this was to lose the baby weight. So this is going back to my last kid, and she's about 18 coming up now. So yeah, no, we've been at this a fair time. And the reason it was HEMA rather than, yoga, Pilates, gym, I just found that stuff really boring. It didn't interest me at all. So I was looking for something different and something that would actually motivate me. And this was different enough that it really caught my attention, and it's managed to hold it for almost 2 decades.
Oh, by the way, most of my viewers probably know, but for those who don't, HEMA means historical European martial arts.
Well, when I first kind of got into sword stuff, I think that was like every kid I think kind of starts playing like video games or movies. For me, it was like Xena, Warrior Princess, and Age of Empires. A lot of Age of Empires as a kid, and Dungeon Siege. Mostly because like when I was young, it had like a woman on the cover, like the Dungeon Siege like package art was like a woman with like a sword like covering half her face, and I was just like, that's so cool. But really, the more academic pursuit of HEMA for me started when I was doing my undergrad at the University of Calgary, and when I'd finished my bachelor's degree in ancient and medieval history, it was right around that time that I'd actually discovered HEMA. Oddly enough, it was at Blood and Iron originally in Vancouver. And I started there, trained for several years, and then it was only in 2018 that I branched off, and I have since started my own club. So I'm the co-founder and head instructor of Mordhau Historical Combat in Mesa, Arizona. So I went from Calgary to Vancouver, and now I'm in the United States in Arizona. So.
That's quite a progression.
Yeah, I've moved around a little bit.
When people talk about fighting women, it comes down to the whole strength thing.
All things being equal, if the man and the woman are of equal skill, men naturally tend to have greater strength. So it kind of sort of depends. If I'm facing a guy and he's, an average fighter, and I put a lot of time and effort into my training, yeah, I've got a good chance that I'm going to beat him. But when you put me up against a Lee Smith or a Stephen Keim or a Kyle Griswold, the likelihood of me being able to overpower or to subdue them, the chances are less likely. And it's just the fact that their skill level approximates or surpasses mine, and my strength is nowhere near what theirs is.
I'm the first to admit that I am always going to be at a disadvantage size-wise. I'm a very small person. I weigh in at 105, and I'm only 5'6". I'm certainly not a very big person, so it's a little harder. I have to work a lot harder for me to be competitive. So in regards to what Andrew Clavin had said, I think when we talk about it in the context of like women can't really fight against men because of like a strength disparity, right? In my case, that's not entirely, I don't want to say untrue, but if I'm fighting somebody like Nicole said, if I was to fight Lee or Kyle Griswold. Kyle is, he's got 130 pounds on me, 130, and he's, 6 feet. If he wants to, he'd just, grab, smash it. There is that. As a small woman, I am at a disadvantage. Someone like Nicole, I think you're what, 5'9", 5'10"?
I'm 5'10", right now I'm about 165. So, on average guy, we're kind of almost on the same playing field. But,
right. Yeah.
When it comes to, that kind of fighting, there is the strength component, but we have other things just, that we use, the measure timing. I'm not going to go in and grapple with somebody who's this size and this skill. I'm going to try and do my thing. So it's not insurmountable. It's just a lot harder.
Also, the thing is, I mean, the issue here with the statement, of course, is 0 women can fight with a sword. That's obvious bullshit. I mean, that's just based on ignorance. But the other
the fantasy aspect of the whole show as well. And one of the things is, okay, this character that's being played, she is a queen. She's probably had the most training available to any person. And you're comparing it to, the average soldier on the battlefield who's probably had minimal training. So, I mean, she's got a pretty good chance of being able to kick ass considering, in theory, what she would have been exposed to.
Yeah. And the thing is also the whole strength difference. Anyone can run into that. As a guy, you can meet plenty of male opponents that are substantially stronger, and you have this. It's not an uncommon problem. It's more of a statistics thing, really. How likely are you to, you, Brittany, are more likely to run into somebody who is physically stronger, but plenty. I've fought plenty of guys who are substantially stronger, and I had to think about, okay, I can't let him come in, I can't let him get to grappling because I'm done if that happens. I need to keep him at bay. So it's the same kind of idea, and it can happen to anyone really, and it's one of those fundamental challenges of sword fighting. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's sort of one of the things that I was gonna go to, is there's a lot of men that are not gigantic, huge behemoths, and nobody looks at the small guys and goes, that's not believable.
Yeah.
Right? You look at the lightweight UFC fighters, and nobody's looking at guys weighing in at 135 and goes, nah, I don't know, he would get wrecked by anybody else. People respect just fighters in general. But I mean, as soon as you put a woman, and in talking in the context of the actress that played Queen Calanthe, she doesn't look particularly petite to me, right? I don't look at her, again, I'm 5'6" and 105 pounds. You couldn't put me in a role like that and expect people to believe it the way that I look. But she's probably not that much smaller than a small guy that you could easily just put in that same role, and people would be like, that's so cool, look at him go. Nobody was freaking out about Conor McGregor. I mean, the dude, he's a small dude, right? But nobody ever questioned that he was able to fight and was dominating, I don't think it's that much of a stretch in the Queen Calanthe case, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It's really, individual difference can really be quite the game changer there. For example, if you look at somebody like, Brienne in Game of Thrones, she's tall and stoutly built and everything. Who would question that? But what I find really irritating, what I've seen a number of times, is when 2 male fighters fight. It's 2 individuals. It's Lee and Richard or whoever it is. People look at just individuals. When there's a male and a female fighter, now suddenly it's no longer individuals. It's now the category. It's now gender versus gender. It's now all men versus all women, suddenly, symbolically, somehow.
Yeah.
How the stakes are higher all of a sudden, and I don't quite understand why. But we've seen a lot of that where you're cheering for one side or the other. There's 2 people fighting with swords, please.
Yeah, there's suddenly all this extra pressure, and you must be getting that a lot. And I've seen that also on the video of the Victoria Highland Games where I fought in the tournament, where some people just pointed out, oh, you won against women, like as if that doesn't count somehow. You probably have to really fight in person and get that experience, that direct experience of sparring or fighting in a tournament to understand that this is not woman. Can't be good, right? It's just, it depends so much on the individual, how much they've trained, individual physical strengths and weaknesses and everything, skill level.
Yeah, and it also depends on the day. Like I've won open tournaments in Rapier, 2 of them.
Yeah.
And it comes down to sometimes it's, the weapon set is not a strength-based weapon, but I mean, skill is everything to play a part in that one. And it was in Mexico and against Lee, and I basically played my chances because I knew he had, other events coming up. So I gave it my all, and I, used that to my advantage. But there's tons of examples of women that did really well. And one of the first people to win an open sword and buckler tournament, I think it was Christine Consumo in Swordfish. I mean, there's tons of women that go out there and they beat their male counterparts. It does happen quite often. I've done it.
Yeah, Skal, you brought up a really interesting point where you said it shouldn't be so weird or like uncommon to see a woman sword fighting and then being like, and automatically assume that she's probably not very good, or like just it being like an unorthodox thing. The HEMA community is, I don't want to say it's unique because I haven't really done, other than jiu-jitsu, I haven't really done any other martial arts outside of this. But the HEMA community is really interesting because it does have so many examples of women who are competing with or without success, just competing in general. You have women that are winning tournaments or winning just, silver or bronze medals. You have lots of instances of women running clubs. I mean, Nicole and I are just 2 examples of many. And it's really, in our community, I don't think it's unusual. I don't think a lot of men enter tournaments and think it's unusual to have a woman in their pool or in their medal match. I don't think most men in the HEMA community look at women as being an unusual thing or like an anomaly. But I think maybe the world outside of our little community does sort of see it as like an unorthodox thing, or maybe like a neat novelty of sorts. And sometimes that maybe annoys me a little bit,
Yeah.
But
I think I get what you mean. I also sometimes look at my viewer statistics on the channel. It's like 95% male. And I'm like, I want to get this out to women and then just let them know, hey, it's okay to be interested in this. Because, sometimes there's also this aspect of maybe somebody is interested, but they think like, oh, well, that's just something that guys do and I wouldn't fit in or whatever. Or maybe they're scared that it's too rough or what have you. But I'm not sure what it is about Victoria in particular, but quite often when I was there during training, it was like 50% or sometimes more. In fact, there were a couple of times when I went to practice and I was literally the only guy there. So it happens. And
it's something unusual with HEMA. We are a full contact sport. We hit each other with swords and sticks and things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed historically in our club, it is higher than, say, boxing or MMA or those. It's about 30% women on average. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we get to wear masks. We don't have to worry about, getting our nose bashed in and our cauliflower ears and all that kind of stuff. So you can go out and you might get a few bruises, but you're not going to break your face.
Right.
So it does appeal. And what I usually tell women, like the ones that are sort of hesitant about, is this a thing for me or is it good? I mean, nowadays we have women's tournaments. You can get your feet wet and give it a try, and you're not coming up against the bruisers right off the bat. So there is sort of like, the lead up to, it's okay to try. Don't be afraid of it. If it's something that interests you, go for it.
It also depends on the choice of weapon. I mean, if you look at longsword, for example, it's going to be more strength based than, say, rapier, for example.
Or single stick. Anything you're not,
exactly.
Single-handed tends to be that way.
Yeah.
But, it is true. If you have 2 hands on a sword, you're able to engage more of your muscles, and it does turn into a bit more of a strength battle. It can.
Yeah. Now, if you practice enough to deal with that, you're also going to get better at dealing with. I mean, even the manuals have some words on how to deal with, the buffalo, somebody who is very strong and uses his strength to his advantage, and what do you do about that? It's challenging, but there are ways to deal with that, and the more you face that, the better you're going to get at it as well.
And you notice that it says that in the manual. And it's like, here's how to deal with somebody who's stronger than you or who's just going to throw their weight around. I don't mean, I'm not the perfect academic, but I'm pretty sure that those parts in the manuals aren't written for women. They're written, not just for small women. It's like men have to deal with the same things, which is what you were saying, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, not to get too off topic, but I think the problem that I had with what Andrew Clavin was saying is, again, like, we know the size disparity or the strength disparity exists, and I don't think many people are refuting that. I think the problem is that, like, he makes obviously a very, like, inflammatory statement, and there's a little bit of, like, it's a little hyperbolic, and we know that he's trying to, like, get a reaction. It's a knee-jerk response that he wants, right? But I think being so bold as to say that 0 women can fight with swords. The issue that I have is how many women were maybe kind of interested in it. Not just HEMA, but the Armored Combat League, SCA, Saber Legion, all the web of sword adjacent activities. How many of them were maybe, like, sort of interested in it, saw that and go, man, men are gonna look at me there and, like, treat me differently or think I don't belong, and it's a boys club, and it's kind of cool, but I don't want to be the only girl, or I don't want to be treated like shit, So that's my issue, is that in saying that, we know it's not true. A lot of people also know it's not true. But how is that going to impact the growth of the sword communities, like HEMA and all the other things that are adjacent?
Yeah.
My issue with it was a little bit different. When he goes off on the fact that women can't fight with swords, it kind of lends itself to that whole argument that, women can't fight, so if you lose to a woman, you must be less than other men.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly what I was going to do.
Negative aspect, and there have been instances, and I don't know if this has happened to you, Brittany, where you get those guys that just don't want to lose to a woman, and they will throw the super hard after blow, or try and do what they can because they are just, their pride can't take the hit. And it doesn't serve our community very well. It doesn't serve women in mixed sports very well. So yeah, that was the issue that I took with it. It's like, damn, when are you going to get over yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That was definitely part of it too, is that it sort of belittles and degrades the work that women like you and I put into this, just years and years of competing and learning and teaching and starting a club and doing all these things that, for somebody to just think, oh yeah, if they lose to you or I, somehow they're less. Yeah. Or like and I've had this actually happen where I've been told, like, straight to my face, like, your medals are meaningless. Your medals they mean nothing. Oh. And I had another woman, and I'm not going to mention her name, but she had told me that she was considering not competing ever again because one of the guys in her club, which actually was like a senior student, I think he was an assistant instructor to her, he told her straight out, he's like, your women's medals mean nothing. Like, you haven't really done anything, and they don't mean anything.
That's idiotic.
It blows my mind, right? Like, anyway, so to...
Sorry, but I think a lot of was he referring to the fact that she was in women's only tournaments? Or
yes.
Was it, okay. Well,
I mean, she had fought open tournaments before, but hadn't won any medals, I think. Don't quote me on that. She may or may not have. I don't know. But at the time, I don't think she had. And I don't want to give away who it is because she told me this in confidence.
That's fair.
But yeah, the fact that she hadn't won any open tournaments in any weapon, she just won a women's medal at the time, and that wasn't worth anything. That wasn't valid. And, for her to consider, like, just quitting completely just broke my heart.
Women having to be more and better than the men.
Yes, like they can't just
That
be.
has been the struggle, like from the beginning. You
Yeah.
can look at any profession. And
It can't just be a bit better. You have to
fallen
be.
into sword fighting doesn't surprise me. It's just sad that it's here.
Yeah, like you have to basically prove yourself way beyond what is expected of guys in the same situation, which is.
I think martial arts, it is a thing. And I found this, like I said, going back to the beginning, and I didn't get the respect until I could beat their ass.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I could kick the crap out of them that people would notice and be like, hey, she can fight. And it was almost a surprise that, I could do this. And I've been getting that literally my entire career. Yeah, too. Hit somebody with something and all of a sudden they'll pay attention to you.
Yeah.
Before you're just there because you're with the guy. I happen to, and this is my thing, because I am married to what is practically HEMA, whatever you want to call it. I don't think he can fight with just about everything, and he's known everywhere for winning stuff. I am in this giant shadow, and this whole fact that yes, she's just here because Lee's here. No, I'm going to hit you with shit too.
I was very fortunate because I started HEMA not with a HEMA guy, right? I didn't have that shadow over me from the beginning. So I was very lucky. I sort of like avoided a lot of that because it wasn't like, oh, that's so-and-so's wife, or oh, that's so-and-so's girlfriend. I really tried to make a name for myself on my own, knowing that was an issue, which is sort of like sad in its own sort of separate sense. I could go on a tangent about that, but I see this so often where, a guy and a girl will show up to class, maybe on a date night, and the guy gets most of the attention because they think, oh, she's not going to sign up anyway. She's only here because he like dragged her along. Or, it happens all the time where people just don't take the woman seriously in the class until she has to prove herself 10 times to every one time that a man just has to show up.
Yeah, no, actually, I have had this happen to me at events where, this is going back to the early days before Lee and I had a school and we were just out there learning. We'd be in a class, and it was in a knife class, and they're telling people to partner up. And I'm standing right in front of this guy, and he's looking everywhere for some other partner because he doesn't want to be with the girl. And then finally, there's no one else left. They're all paired up, and he's like, oh, I got us stuck with you. And it wasn't until we actually started training, and he's like, oh, you're actually serious about this. Like, I had to prove that I kind of sort of knew what I'm doing, and I am serious about my training.
One thing I want to say to any guys who might be watching this who are practicing HEMA, if you practice with a female partner, don't just hold back because she's a woman. Like, be considerate of your practice partner. Like, for example, in sparring, if your partner, regardless of gender, if they seem hesitant or uncomfortable or like you're way above them or whatever, scale it down, obviously. Give them a chance to learn. But don't belittle them just by like, I'm just going to give you these lighthearted taps and I'm just going to, whatever. It's just insulting.
And then I'd start hitting them hard. And
and also, it's not productive because that way you can't learn if somebody doesn't practice with you as a proper opponent,
Really, that's the only way to smarten them up, is to try and out-train them a little bit. Okay,
just
fine.
Beat some sense into them. There's a lot of baggage involved, unfortunately.
That's an understatement. Let's be real. The real problem he had was with a female character who's not traditionally female in every sense of the word. Yeah. And he seemed to take more issue with, a woman being too manly. His issue isn't with women and swords. His issue is with women.
Yeah. His issue is that not everybody agrees with his rigid idea of gender, basically.
Yes, the fact that women can have a masculine side and a feminine side. And I think his problem, what was he saying? That she was tearing meat off and comes in.
I was reading that, like, Dude,
I'm like,
what?
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about you, Nicole. Like, I don't know, but I know for me, if I'm eating like a slab of ribs, I'm doing it very daintily, very like, I'm very like,
Nibble the turkey
just
leg.
little nibbles and like always like, I'm very dainty about my rib eating.
Fighting done by women is done in a very dainty way, like with a small sword. It's very precisely just run you through the liver and just be super, curtsy afterwards as you bleed out. That's the way to go.
Yes, I think we actually do have a really good sword community. I can't speak for the other like sword adjacent stuff. I can't speak for ACL. I can't speak for SCA or any of those. Just HEMA, but I think we've actually come very far in the last five years or so to really be almost like just normal about women in HEMA. And I say normal, not like trying to create special exceptions to include them or like special rules to keep them safe. Or I think just allowing us to exist in a way that's not patronizing.
Yeah.
I remember the first event that we went to, Festival America. That was God knows how many years ago. It was like the event in North America. And, there was no women's tournaments because there was me and one other woman and, 30 guys. So there really wasn't much choice. And they just threw you in there and away you went. And that event, I didn't find a lot of, pushback for, being a woman. It kind of happened a little bit later on as things got bigger, but in the beginning it wasn't so bad, and I'm happy to hear that it's kind of sort of going back to that.
Yeah. At least in my experience, it's been really, really welcoming. But I mean, I'm sort of like, again, I'm very fortunate. I've had a lot of women come before me and pave that way that have, like I said, won open medals before, and I sort of stand on the shoulders of giants already. And I think that, women like you or Christine Consmo, who I will forever just like, I could wax poetic about Christine. She's the best in the entire world. But, women that have put in that work before me, and now I'm reaping the benefits because I can show up as an instructor on a roster for big events, like the biggest events in the country. And nobody bats an eye at it. They're not like, why is she on there? Oh, she's the token woman, or I'm respected as an instructor in my own right. The events that I've taught at, I'm not the only woman anymore, and there's 3, 4, 5 other women, and they're all very exceptional. They've got medals, they've got accolades, they've written books, they've done all these incredible things. So it is really nice to see how the community has grown to include women in a really positive way.
Mm-hmm. That's also something I've always really appreciated about Blood Iron Victoria. It doesn't really make any noticeable difference there. Male, female, whatever. There's no special treatment or anything. It's just people are doing their thing. They're practicing. They're fighting. That's how you want it. That's really all there is to it. And at that point, it's much more about individuals. It's about individuals' experience and skill and dedication and all of that.
Yeah,
it's all
it's
good.
Something that we tried to foster in both of our clubs, like right from the get-go. It's always been that kind of a space, and we've never allowed it to be anything else.
It's been the same thing at my club as well, at Mordhau, where, I mean, having a female instructor sort of just sets that tone right off the bat. Obviously, you know all about that, Nicole. Yeah. But we try to do the same thing. And I think I speak for most women when I say this. We just want to be able to be there and train, learn sword stuff, in my case, teach sword stuff, and just exist, like without any strings attached. And for anybody who is a training partner to a woman or who happens to be a club leader that has female students, this shouldn't come as a surprise. And I'm sure most YouTube people that are interested in this know this, but just treat us like people.
Yeah.
That's all we want. Simple. Like, not asking for a lot here.
Yeah. And that's the main thing. Whenever people get offended or start some shitty debates and whatever, it's usually they jump on the conclusion that it's about some kind of special treatment or whatever, which it really isn't. It's as simple as that.
I mean, there are some differences when it comes to, physical training.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
sure.
women are built different than men, so there are
Mhm.
some adjustments and things that need to be made, and even sometimes a little bit of the psychology behind it. But no, in general, when you're training and sparring, it is,
Mhm.
treat them the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no different than like if a student shows up and they're like, I'm left-handed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, okay, we might have to tweak your training a little bit or like, do some things a little bit differently. But, they get the same sort of attention, the same kind of treatment. And if somebody comes to you and goes like, hey, I have a really serious anxiety disorder, and they happen to be male or male identifying or whatever, nobody looks at them and goes like, ooh, okay, we'll treat you like fine china. You accommodate, but you don't treat them any differently, and be kind to people. Like, that's really about it.
Now you're speaking a foreign language as far as the internet is concerned. Treating people what is that?
Be nice to everyone.
Why can't we all just get along?
No.
Oh, see, I try to be nice to everybody.
While you hit them with a sword.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you're gonna hit someone with a sword, I mean, hopefully you're doing it in the context of like friendliness.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like you are considerate, even though you hit it, or like you can say even though, but it's more like particularly because you hit each other with swords. You can knock each other out. You can cause damage. You have to be able to trust each other, and you have to be able to, not act like a douche.
One of the things I've noticed about sparring with people, you get to know them on a different level, and some of your most interesting friendships come from hitting people with things.
Yeah.
It's really strange, but you form a very interesting bond with someone after you've hit them with things a couple of times.
That is so true.
Later, but I know you've experienced it.
Yeah. You speak the common language of the sword.
You don't even have to speak the same language. You just hit each other with swords and you're friends.
Yeah.
Sorry, that sounded so motivational poster.
Like, parlez-vous français? It's work. Boom. Does it answer the question?
I've had sparring matches with. We can't really have a conversation because their English isn't so good, but we're friends. We hit each other with swords.
Yeah. All right. I think we've covered just about everything on the topic, and thank you very much for joining in, Nicole and Brittany. It was fun to talk about this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. And hope everybody enjoyed it. Maybe you learned a thing or two. And I think the takeaway message here is, don't be a douche canoe. Just treat people nice, and it'll work. And we'll all speak the common language of the blade. All right.
I need that on a motivational poster or something.
Yes.
Common language of the blade. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for watching, and have a good one, folks.